very bright light. Hello? Oh. Hi. I'm going to take my glasses off so I can't see anyone. Pretend I'm here by myself. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Rausch, and I am the Poetry Program Coordinator at the Care Center here in Holyoke. Our poetry program was founded over 20 years ago, and in that time it's grown from an elective course to a twice weekly essential. And a central part of this program is bringing nationally published and acclaimed poets and writers to read for our students. Today, I have the honor of introducing Prageeta Sharma. Prageeta Sharma was born in Framingham, Massachusetts. She attended Simon's Rock College of Bard for her undergraduate studies and received an MFA in poetry from Brown University and an MA in media studies from the New School. Prageeta is the author of 5 poetry collections, including Grief Sequence, which she'll read from today, Undergloom, Infamous Landscapes, The Opening Question, and Bliss to Fill. Her new book, One Mint One, is due out this fall. She teaches at Pomona College and lives in Claremont, California. So I first discovered Prageeta's work last summer when Una Cook, our executive director, mentioned she had a friend from college who is now a well-known poet. Would I be interested in bringing her to come read for us? So of course I said yes. But that afternoon I got online and I found Prageeta's Sequence 7 from Grief Sequence. I was immediately taken in by the plain-spoken and intimate portrayal of grieving. From lines like, "It's how we moved out of consciousness," to "I remember how stunning he was resting in bed," I felt the poet's despair and restraint as she navigated the loss of her husband to cancer. As Prageeta writes in The Moon Has Set poetry obituary, saying goodbye to loved ones is an impossible task, and I, though I can also read this as we, will never have closure. It is this kind of hard-learned wisdom that Prageeta brings to such life and her work. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Prageeta Sharma.
Oh. Wait, I think I can, how's that? Is that good? Okay, just let me know if I don't, okay, I think this is good. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Una. Thank you to all of you here. And what a vibrant space of art making and writing and living and mothering and being kind of connected to each other in community. And I haven't been back to Holyoke. I came here. I came to Holyoke in maybe 25 years ago with my dad. We were driving through, but I've also I have such affection for the Happy Valley and Western Mass from going to school here and spending time in Amherst and Northampton. So I'm also grateful. I'm also grateful to friendship. That's something that I hope that we're all just nurturing our deep friendships in this room. So yes, Grief Sequence. Because I thought that I would just read from this book. My new book is coming out in September, and sadly, it's also about grief, but it's also about love, grief, and other things that come up. But I lost my second husband to cancer November 18th, 2023. And I didn't think that I would have to journey through this again. But I think like what we all recognize is that we kind of linger in losses, and then we linger in the joy of the present moment. So what you'll see with Grief Sequence is that I really try to think about a journey from kind of recognition of change to falling in love again. So this is going to be chronological. And maybe it'll be recurring, which is I start this book. The epigram is from the writer and thinker and philosopher Roland Barthes, who has these lines from his book on the loss of his mother. and he wrote a diary really tracking how he felt about the loss of his mother. And so it's really interesting to think about diaries. And I know that you're all keeping journals, which I'm going to blather a little, which actually I'm going to put the timer on too, so I can keep myself in check with the time. But I know you're all keeping journals, and I had just finished a class called Diaries and Daybooks, Women's Diaries and Daybooks, where we all wrote together. And so it all really started from this book. So here's this line: not to suppress mourning, suffering, the stupid notion that time will do away with such a thing, but to change it, transform it, to shift it from a static stage, stasis, obstruction, recurrences of the same thing, to a fluid state. And that's from Morning Diary, Roland Barthes. I'm going to start with the first poem, which is after a dear poet who passed. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. I'm looking at Jeff because we just read poems of hers at the Emily Dickinson grave yesterday. And it's for Alice Notley, a wonderful and beautiful poet who helped me so much because she too was widowed twice. And so her poetry books are often these places of grief and love. And she really, in a way, taught me how to think about strength. So, sorry, I won't talk so much after I start reading. On Seclusion and Looking Out, after Alice Notley. Seclusion may kill your heart in the process of producing the love-stained stench in your poems, the ones containing boundaries of shame with their sober problems, bits describing loss, mirroring its inward entanglements, glow torches you have never seen before. You light them with two selves and don't wait for anything to flicker false. You can discern the lantern of a falling man who burned down his desire with tiny, humiliated gestures. The mountain peak so high, thus you believe it gives you the one majestic evening you earned. Its embrace is a gentle coercion into wide wilderness, an amenable tyranny of its expansion, grief's artillery to fill all of the black clouds, that sallow blue sky, painting it with electric photographic sweeps. You have to find your strength in this. So something that you'll see in these poems is I have a kind of a deep ambivalence to my first husband, Dale. He was very lovely and yet very difficult and complicated. So I hope that these poems might get you to think about the losses you might have that are complicated, that you have both love and maybe hatred for, and you still need to write through them. I want to honor that we're really complex when we love people. So this book is, but then when I met Mike, he was sort of like the opposite, and I had so much love. So I'm reading poems that might track some difficult feelings, but I know you're all writing daily, and we all hold these kinds of feelings. But so this one is about feelings, a human with feelings. I'm having trouble today. How gauche it is to be in this body, being unseen by you now. And I'm wearing to bed the floral shirt I bought you because it's the only thing that keeps me intact. You are not you anymore, and I'm trying to understand how a human with feelings disappeared. You were mine. You were floral. You were more than a presence felt. But I fight to find you among the loudest, drunkest voices laughing at me when I go to their bars. Where are you? You held me in so many of them. So this book kind of started with this. I found this entry and I just copied it into this book, and I left it the way I wrote it, so I could track what my writing might look like when it's really raw, and then when I add more language to it, and I want to think kind of more with more density. November 23rd, 2014. I've been writing to you for such a long time that I stopped writing and began speaking to you. I was speaking to you before you even started drinking your coffee, and you kept pleading with me to wait until you finished. Could you give me a minute? I'm listening to you. I listen to every word. It's true. I didn't write poems to you anymore because I have you in my company. And in my company, I have you. And I have to understand what it means to have your company. Does it mean I just talk to you until you die, until you don't know what I'm saying, and I can't say it anymore? Is this why I have to write poems now? If I can't talk to you anymore, I won't know what to do with myself. So then I go into just a section called sequences, and I think, when lots of us, I think, have experienced trauma, our memory gets compromised. And so I started trying to figure out if I could kind of think about what my sequences, what my thinking looked like when it was really forgetful or foggy, and what could I track. But I also wanted to think about ideas of learning and processing information. So I have a conceptual poem that begins this section. And so after sequences, I have this little list that will appear in another poem, ideas from it. Learning without knowing, implicit. Loving, explicit. Dying, explicit. Organizing, implicit. Institutional hate, implicit. Grieving, explicit. Compromise, implicit. Dreaming, organizational. Staying in house, implicit. Leaving house, explicit. Sequence, then recursion. And so you'll see these try to retrieve memory. Sequence 1. What is explicit now is that I had been a defenseless dependent for those years. I wasn't hedging a bet with a life then. I was just helping myself to it, and to the party of coupledom in its normality, in its rewarding of intimate interferences, and to this one person I loved. I ground life to a powder underfoot with the dominion of freedom in front of me. We both did carelessly then. We shared a living grief of what disturbed us about others, but it lived only in a grievance and in the exterior walls. But then this, and I stopped being in those perceptual truths of the mind's eye seeing who was where. This was a kind of luxury of living in knowingness. I gave that out without understanding. I gave that up without understanding I had to. When it does come back, I will know I am healing. What followed? I was struck back up, bent forward and sprung by my dry, hapless complacency. You see, I was sitting for too long, but at a certain point, I see I just buckled, and then he quickly slipped into a part of himself that became part of the hospital. Memories curved and then sounded, were sibilant in jest, and from not his mouth and not his teeth. And the breath grew so sharp, and he grew so thin and gaunt, that he was buried in a slander his body made of him, and I could only spurn cancer as an enemy. Nonetheless, it overtook, was inside his brain, his chest, a tumor catching the lymph nodes. And did he tell the doctor he didn't love me anymore, and that's why I wasn't allowed into those conversations? Did he want to end with his end and not share it with me? I was a nobody outside of his illness, as was he. But there was no togetherness in there, except for something I craved of him and he of me. Perhaps we couldn't do stout-hearted with too much talk, or we must have really believed we had time. There was not the send-off of which we held each other and the deepness of ourselves, the kind with dramatic northeasterly consciousness. No, it was a disaster of insufficiency that now I learn is what death does with you if you watch it take out what it needs. It's the power outage with a powdery starch, granules trailing the floor. One foot in front of the other, I have said now to a nobody with me in the laundry room. I spoke out to a nobody that was once him, but I don't believe in the idea that he'd even follow me there. I know these are so dark. I do have some more joyous poems. What I'll do is I'll read sequence 7, which Sarah referred to, and then read just a few more. And that's, sorry, I should have been giving you these page numbers. This is page 24. And I'm sorry, there's some, again, with lots of these poems, there is some, this one has some charged, maybe triggering language like some others. Sequence 7. I thought he was over-medicating himself and planning his suicide. I took the pills away from him. He looked defeated. He said as much. I felt sorry for both of us. His expression held this enormity and a seared, exhausted center. Spatial discomfort started to affect him, but didn't take hold till the next day, when he started to lose consciousness and rattled the house yelling about thieves, robbers, drunks, and pill snatchers. We didn't know what was going on. The tumor was rapidly metastasizing its mass through his cerebellum. His body became harder to manage, and he sprang fearfully through the house, tugging violently at his bile duct tube. Asia and I camped in the front rooms. The last night of intimacy, of lucidity, unbeknownst to me, we sat together huddled, and I caressed him, cradling his arms, his legs, and his penis. I was sure we had time left for more, but this was the last time he spoke and searched my face and looked at me with a recognition I understood. It's how we moved out of consciousness, and I'm haunted by those last days before we succumbed to hospice. I remember how stunning he was resting in bed that week before, in our library, with a cornflower blue-sheeted bed prepared lovingly by Ashby and Spider. In that bed, an unofficial hospice, he had a look of wonder when we put movies on. He excited over Wilson, The Ball, and Castaway, and stared unblinkingly at Tom Hanks. We giggled over this and appreciated how Andrew put the Eno station on next, and Asia lit and framed the sheeted bed with twinkling lamp and illuminant bulbs Dale found soothing. We all watched him compose in the air to Philip Glass. I wish that we could have unleashed him to his afterlife then. That's what he would have wanted, a release to his own universe, sonant and material, an ethereal ball, an awkward Tom Hanks, a Wilson, and a Castaway in a glittering hand-printed sea. This death sequence was the one I wanted for him. So I'm going to kind of end with these two poems. So it's actually been really cathartic to reread this book to prepare for this reading, because these last poems really are about my love for Michael, my second husband. And the way I get to land in them feels so alive for me. And that's the beautiful thing about poetry, is you get to document what's really alive for you, and then you get to keep it right there and visit it anytime you need to. Oh, I didn't know if you were raising your, you're taking, okay, sorry. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm, okay. This is a kind of a joke we had. It's a little, now I feel like it's a little bit, it's a song from, forgot his name, but he was part of Fleetwood Mac, and then he went on his own, and Bob, thank you, Katie. I love Bob Welch, and so it's the song Sentimental Lady, and so this title kind of comes from a line, but which is now I feel a little self-conscious about it, but I'm going to read it. It's I Come So Together Where You Are, from Bob Welch's Sentimental Lady. I had a gently gentle touch to give you, and it took me many months to recover it. It's because death mediated not just my beloveds, but what made you also widowed and deeply solitary. Keeping you out of yourself in some way, I felt. Beloved by otherworldliness, you had been loved deeply by another who left you permanently. I felt this upon our first meeting when my love was alive and yours wasn't, and you had a darkness of such. After his death, I had to travel by Boeing from Missoula to Seattle. You picked me up from the airport when I had ashes in hand. You let me write to you. When I was in India putting his ashes in the Ganges, and you let me tell you about my cousin's death a month later, who was with me at the Ganges, and he too had darkness. But you let me imagine my late husband was in on everything, including ushering my cousin to rest. Even though you were an atheist and so am I in many ways. Even though I do come so together where you are, and will do this every day if you'll let me. I come gently with all my unconscious troubles packed. And so I listen to every 70s light song for the messages of discovery that draw us away from the unconscious, guilted grip and faulty trap, and make me serenade into and out of the halts of beholding you, for you to recognize the sound and reasonable influence of the widower hero you are. Yeah, so Mike and I were both widowed, and so we really bonded over that and how we grieved. And so my last poem, I'm just getting rid of the timer, is Abide. And I was listening to all these 70s light songs on Pandora, which I'm told now everybody's still listening to. So I'm not alone. But so I've got the Delphonics in here and Earth, Wind, and Fire. Abide. You have gone to get a haircut in Kirkland, but before you left, you rubbed my arms to warm them out of the blankets with a dearness that I thought I would never find. When you grow older and I fret that you too will die, you will tell me that I conflate the stars with tombs. I sang you Earth, Wind, and Fire's reasons, and we folded into the Delphonics. Didn't I blow your mind this time? And I said you didn't, you don't even know you did. You're too modest to even think you could. And you know somewhere hidden we live now to solve our soft heart's problems, which come from the fallen places where they are the raconteurs who died on us. They took up the largesse of the art of death, but we don't care who had the better lover, the better spouse, the kinder or more considerate one. Now we can just take this morning and stretch out a line of aporia, an aphoristic single-sided horizon of trees, buildings, and sky. Thank you. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, I have a traveling, too loud? Too loud. There we go, better. I have a traveling mic, so anyone who would like to ask questions, just raise your hand and I'll pass it over to you. Closer or farther? Closer. You have a question, Leah?
I'm scared. Is this good? Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for visiting us.
Thank you for having me.
My question was about what was your experience of the gray space between experiencing the grief and being able to externalize it? I was just wondering creatively what that was like for you.
Sure. It felt, I wondered, that's a great question. I wondered what I was capable of right after Dale died. For 3 months, I could not really recall anything but the experience of the hospital. I couldn't remember the marriage. I couldn't remember the relationship. I could only remember, because Dale got diagnosed in November of 2014 and died 2 months later. And so the decline was very quick and overwhelming. And so that's why I put that one poem while he was alive in to kind of teach me what I might do with any scribbling I did that felt very raw. Like, what was I going to teach myself about documentation and my diary when I felt almost paralyzed with grief? And then what could I track as a healing process to write through an inability. And what could a poem look like when I started raw, and then I added the language that that almost could soothe me. And some of it was cerebral, and some of it was tactile and sensorial, and some of it was thinking about why I was listening to Pandora's 70s Light or Yacht Rock or whatever, because I felt like the weird lyrics were like the dead speaking to the living. and so I would track like language. So I don't know, until I could build back my brain, if that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello there.
Hi.
Oh, wow. I can feel my breathing. Thank you for reading. That was beautiful and powerful. I have kind of two questions.
Yeah.
The first one, what was the time frame in which you were collecting all these poems? How many years passed?
Oh, yeah.
And then my second question was, what were the moments in which you felt, like, given all of the emotions that prompted these poems, which were the moments in which you felt most inspired or emotionally capable of writing the poems?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So the first question, first we're tracking how long. Yeah. I started writing, the journal entry was 2014, but I started kind of tracking, I guess 3 months after Dale died, I was starting to write again, or I at least was trying to do some recall. I was keeping a dream journal where I only recorded dreams where I thought he appeared or I had glimpses, and that was going to, and I incorporated that back in here a little bit. Some of the poems are generated from dreams or ways of retrieving material. The other thing is he died so unexpectedly in his decline that I looked for scraps of paper. I looked for any kind of message he might leave me, and he didn't leave me anything really. Not that, other things, other surprises. And so I worked on the book, and I passed it into Wave. I started talking to Wave Books about the manuscript I was working on in 2016. So I would say I started working on a draft, finished the draft in 2017. So two years, yeah. And then I revised with my editor, Josh, and then submitted it, I guess, in 2018 for publication in 2019. So it was a journey. Yeah. I hope that answers. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What was the second question? My brain can only
Oh, yeah.
question at a time. What was the second
question was, what were the moments in which you felt most inspired to write?
Okay, so it's funny because that is my new book now. Falling in love again. I really have to say I was so annihilated by the death of my first husband, and I discovered a lot of secrets after he passed that were devastating. And it was like a month. I think it was even like on my birthday, 3 weeks after he passed. I discovered that he just wasn't faithful, and he had some addiction issues. And I had inklings, but it was confirmed, and he was no longer alive. So I had to learn how to both grieve him, because I was in the shock of grief, and wrestle with truth and be disappointed by myself. So I had to figure out how could the poems grieve, mourn, and reckon, and what would that look like? So then falling in love 10 months later, which, people always think people will judge what's quick and what's not, but when you go through trauma and loss, you have to do it by yourself. So you learn that the time you keep and what you negotiate is your own truth. So I wanted the poems, they became inspired by thinking about truth and attachment, and that I am a person who believes in love. And so I wanted to believe in love again, because I did love Dale, and he taught me how to love. I wasn't done loving him, even if he was done loving me. So I learned, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have any other questions? Any more questions? Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if this is true for you. I've known your poetry since the 1990s, when you were a little younger than you are and we are now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who write poetry start writing maybe in their teens out of a sense of feeling, out of a sense of a deep feeling and a need to express something.
Yeah.
And then you stick with it as your chosen sort of art form, and maybe it becomes more intellectual, more informed, and more, cerebral, like you said. And it seems to me that maybe you've made some of that journey, but then you come back to a deep emotion, and these poems are from a deep emotional place. I wonder if you can talk about that,
Yeah,
process.
yeah. I mean, I have a joke that I used to be funny. and then my book, Undergloom, which is about race and racism and white supremacy and all this stuff. And then I was not funny in that book. And then everybody died. And then I became really unfunny. But but I am thinking about like how complex we are as people. We get to be several people, and we have several selves, and we have lots of feelings. But it is interesting to think about what kind of writing will hold what part of your personality. And even if I'm writing about race, it's very much about feeling. And so I started to try to figure out what does my authority and my feeling look like as a woman? What space can I take up? What is uncomfortable, but also what gives me autonomy and strength? And when is it emotional? What do people decide is emotional and what is intellectual? And why is that? I'm not saying but why is that divided when in fact, can they blend? Can I have this authority and make my space in my art to take up a lot of authority with my mind thinking, with my emotions? So I wanted to make these integrated spaces that were generated from feeling but built my intellectual stamina or my idea of myself, because I want that, I want to have it be a whole self on the page somehow. I don't know if that, I'm no longer funny though. I have to figure that out. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Prageeta. It's great to listen to your poetry. I have a question about, and one of my experience of listening to you was that it was very raw and very real and very moving, and it also felt like art. And so one of the things that I find interesting is that art has an implicit social contract, right? That you are a maker and you're offering this to the world. And I think that in your poetry, and therapy or healing is often, it doesn't come with that axiom of a social contract. And so your work really feels like it weaves those things together. And so I guess I was just curious if you could, and maybe it relates to this place, about the way in which art and creativity can be a vehicle to offering kind of both of those things.
I like thinking about a social contract. I also like thinking about the difficult thing about this book that doesn't get talked about, but may be important in this space, but maybe it's a little... I write explicitly about misogyny in this book, and about being disappointed by, the way love and masculinity, and there's a lot of toxic masculinity in here. When I had to wrestle with kind of being abandoned by a toxic man who is a fallen man, and so there's a social contract around ideas about gender and unabashed ideas of love that face misogyny. I don't know if that, but I think about as women, we're having to battle a lot of our resources to find our strength and courage to raise children, to be alone, to be in community with care, but I think it's like art making may nourish this, and so I felt that I was processing a lot of, I hope, a kind of resilience for myself. I don't know if this is answering your question at all, but I do think that it felt really empowering to address some grievances in here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Any final questions before we wrap up? One more. Okay.
Hi. I know for me what the answer to this question is, but I would love for our students to hear about how poetry and art are skills for life and how we might continue to better ourselves in the long run and use those skills.
Yeah, I mean, I feel so biased because I love poetry so much and I love art making so much, and I found a way to keep doing it for my life, which I feel like is the biggest secret, the good thing I got to do. But I also didn't believe I could do anything but write a poem, which made me feel a little like strange and useless. But I just believed in it so much. But what I learned is that the ideas of language empowered me and gave me a voice. I grew up in Framingham. I was bullied in high school, and it was very, very racist place at that time. And I didn't really have friends, and I was very isolated until I went to Cambridge School for a year and then to Simon's Rock. But the poem was the place where I felt knowable. And I had a diary. I wrote my poems, and I did believe that if I could see myself on the page, I could persevere, even when I was unknowable. And if I could learn what sentences did for me and what lines did, and I could write, I could figure out what that could mean, and I could live a life of the mind, which is where my head was. My head was in the clouds, which was my head, which was my mind. And I could think on the page. So I would just say I felt intellectually empowered by the poem, and that it could be strange, and I was strange. So I sound really sappy in saying that I just felt deeply empowered by being a poet, and I always, at Pomona or wherever I am, I try to support anyone who wants to make art and figure out all the practical things to make it happen. So I always try to empower everybody with all the tools to know where they can get into fully funded programs and get support. I hope that helps. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Prageeta. Thank you for joining us.